structure and
We're
the
going in, we're going live. We're live. Welcome to Tuesday Talk. As you can probably guess, we have conversations before we go live. And then, we'll be like in the middle of talking and I'm pushing a live button. So that's what we do here at the Shrine of Sekhmet. I should have had you backstage and then bring you up when it's time for you to come up. But next time, we'll do it like that next time. So let me check. I have a message already. Let me see. Okay, cool. Oops. What happened there? What happened to that? There we go. Okay. Everything is back to normal. Okay, good. When you come into the space, just please let us know where you are chiming in from. Now, my mom was an English teacher, and you are not supposed to end your sentences with prepositions because prepositions have the object of the preposition and the prepositional phrase. And I can just hear my mom explaining that to me, like to this day, in my head. Every time I say a sentence and it's not structured correctly. So, from where are you chiming in? Let me know. Did you have that kind of like of a grammar lesson life when you were younger?
I was bad at English grammar, and I grew up with basically my grandmother or my mom or somebody. They try to fix. Talk. We ain't nobody got time for that. Like they make fun of you for talking the way they talk. So for me, I kind of intuitively knew, like I'm not intelligent because I can't read or because I can't do the grammar. So like I was never good at English, but I can write, I can articulate myself. Like so the problem is I have to edit what I write though. So that's my thing.
You mean edit what you write because of what you say or because of the grammar and stuff like that or the structure?
Yeah, the grammar, like the
Oh, okay.
like I can spell words, like I have grammar, but like I'm sure it's not like like it's not like an English teacher. It's not,
Right.
you know,
What an English teacher would have.
like I can like I'm like I can like I read, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I know the difference in language, but I also like I know like as I've studied more of African languages,
Mhm.
I kind of stopped caring so much about code switching. I just know I talk how I talk and I think how I think. So I just read and talk and then try to write.
It's interesting about code switching. Before I knew what code switching was, I was code switching, not intentionally. It's just certain environments call for certain kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
Like if we are having a conversation right now on StreamYard, it's going to be a little less formal than if we have in an auditorium. Well, maybe not. Who knows? But the point is, like, I found the validity in code switching because I was doing it automatically and didn't know it. And I think when you're taught, there's certain things you're supposed to wear and say in certain environments or do, et cetera. Then that just eventually it starts to show up in when you're speaking. Because there's some things you can say around your friends you can't say around your grandmama.
Well, yeah, and that's why I said, like, I mean, code switching, I think there's a difference between maybe discretion, right? Like
Hmm.
respect and
Hmm.
like code switching. Cause I think like sometimes code switching, the issue I have with it is I don't believe that I have maybe a white validation syndrome. So I think
Hmm.
sometimes people do that code switching thing and because they're concerned with
What
white.
white people think? What white
Yeah,
people think?
exactly. So
Yeah.
to me, that's kind of why I got an issue with like minstrelsy. You see what I mean? Like I just got a big issue with it in total.
Right.
So for me, like I try not to name call, but sometimes you see people and like I had there I always in my mind think of Malcolm X talking
Hmm.
about the March on Washington,
Hmm.
where he was like he was like it wasn't a march, it was a circus. White clowns and black clowns.
White clouds and black clouds.
Like, like when he's saying it, it's like I laughed at first. Like I'm like oh, like that's crazy. That's a diss.
But was he wrong?
You be looking at these marches and you be looking at who out there on skateboards with flags. And you be like, yo, white clowns and black clowns. Look
Why
at
are we doing this? So before we get started, I do want to mention this one last thing since you mentioned Malcolm X. You know that there's a celebration of his, like a birthday celebration for him every May 19th at Ferncliff Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
Oh, so are you going to go this May?
I've never been. I've never been. No, so I mean, I'd be open to it. I definitely like to go.
I'm gonna go. We should talk about it offline.
Okay.
Yeah. I've only gone one time,
okay.
and Professor Smalls, James Smalls, he's the one who like coordinates everything, and it's a beautiful ceremony. So
okay, yeah. I know of it, and people in Afrocentricity International, the organization I'm part of, they've been
okay.
So like I know, and I know of Dr. Smalls. He's brilliant. Like I follow a lot of his lectures, and I admire him greatly. He's an esteemed elder. I respect him dearly.
I feel the very same way.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to get started with today's episode of Tuesday Talk. So for today, we are going to be talking about something that a lot of people ask about and talk about, and I know from being a priestess with the Shrine of Ma'at, the type of inquiries that people have requested of what they want to learn. And one of the things that people want to learn is about number one, our ancestral connection to spirituality, which is really broad, because you say, well, how far back is an ancestor? Is it the ancestors that are just in my lineage? Or is it the ancestors who, like Malcolm X, everyone would consider him their ancestor, right? Or not everyone, but people in this space.
I'm sorry. I'm like, I have books. There it is. My book bag's here. Go ahead. I'm listening to you.
Okay, good. I was like, what? What's
going on? I have something for you. I have something to help you with this. I have a book.
Oh, is it African philosophy?
It's called African Religions and Philosophy. It's written by a man named John Mbidi.
Okay.
But finish your thought. I don't want to interrupt you.
Okay. So what I was saying was, as a priestess with the Shrine of Ma'at, I was privy to knowing what a lot of the requests were, and people have requested understanding our spirituality, our ancestral spirituality. And so that can mean a couple of different things. Like, how far back are we going? Are we going back to the original people? What did they practice? When I wanted to find African spirituality, I bought a book on what the Sandkoi people, who are the pejorative is the Sand Bushmen, what they practiced. And I bought this book and I read it, and I had no idea I just didn't know. I had no idea what was going on and what things meant. And I just remember there was just this story about snakes, and I was like, what? Then I came to understand that Atama, who wrote it,
snakes.
And I was like, all right, this I can't, like, because ultimately what I wanted to do was practice. I didn't have that vocabulary, even a word as simple as practice, but that's what I wanted to do. I didn't just want to know what I wanted. I wanted to practice it. And then I said, okay, let me practice Yoruba. And I said Yoruba because I did not know that was the name of the people, and what they practiced was Ifa. So now I'm looking for Yoruba because I want to practice Yoruba. That's like saying I'm looking for black to practice black. Like
Yoruba is the language, and I would say people they're followers of Ifa, because Ifa means destiny.
Well, at the time, I don't even know if I had heard the word Ifa. I just was like, well, I know these people are black. They're from West Africa. That's where most of my people are probably from. I want to do that. It was really just like big chunks of connections from this little middle-class girl from Connecticut to West Africa, because I was sick of the church. So there's this spiritual place in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and I said, let me go there. I think they practice Yoruba. I'm still there, thinking that that's what I'm about to try to do, practice a people or practice a language. And so I decided not to go because I didn't know anything about the religion. Clearly, I didn't even know what the name of it was. I didn't know anyone there. So you can't not know anything about the religion and know no one, because then you're going in double blind. You have no idea what someone is going to say or do, if it's true or not. And you just don't know who these men are there, how they gonna act. I ain't trying to fight nobody's priest in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So let me just not put myself in a situation like that. So then I was stuck. And eventually, some of you have heard the story. I met Dr. Ntr Seshat at, we were volunteering for an organization, and I saw her joyari, and I was drawn to it. I looked over for a second, and I saw all of her joyari, and I walked right over and started talking to her. And then from there, I was able to find not only Kemetic spirituality, but African spirituality and the general broad brushed concept of African spirituality and the similarities amongst all of it. So in a way, meeting Ntr Seshat was somewhat of an opening of the way for me.
Yeah.
The other experience that I had right after that was when I went to Cuba. I went to Cuba twice. I went to Cuba in 2012 and then 2015. In 2015, I went to Cuba, and I went with a group called the Venceremos Brigade. And we stayed at a camp, and there was a ceremony. And two people had to be in the ceremony. The youngest person who was in our camp group, our Venceremos Brigade group, and the oldest person. And I was the oldest person. I was like, dang, y'all make a sister feel kind of bad, but whatever. So I had it's interesting. I had my afro out, which I had my afro out earlier tonight, y'all. And I had to get up in there with the brush and the moisturizer because your girl's fro is like this. But anyway, I love it, but I just, I had to slick it down anyway, whatever. So I had my big afro, and I had a big yellow flower in my hair. I had on a flowy yellow sundress, and I had on yellow flip-flops. So I'm in this ceremony wearing all this yellow in Cuba, right? So some of y'all know where this is going or have an idea. So I go back to the room in the camp where we were staying, and there's two women in there, two Latinas, one an Afro-Latina. I think she was Puerto Rican. No, she was Puerto Rican. And the other one was Venezuelan, if I'm not mistaken. And they were talking. And then I walk in and they stop. And one of the girls says, "You ask her." And I'm like, oh God, I ain't do nothing. I'm trying to think, ask me what? So then she says, "Do you practice Santeria?" I had never heard that word before. And the closest word to Santeria that I had ever heard at that point was sangria. So I thought she had like
What's the word? Sorry, the next
sangria,
one?
like the drink.
Yeah, sangria. Yeah.
That's ignorant, but it's the truth. I didn't know at the time. And so Spanish. I was like, is she talking about sangria? So she explained to me what it was, Santeria. She explained the orishas. She explained Oshun, because I had on all this yellow, and she just broke it down. So even though I met her 5 years after I met Ntr Seshat, that was somewhat of an opening of the way for me, because now I understood that there were syncretic religions that were formed due to those particular circumstances. So it was just a blending. In 2014 and 2015, 2014, my aunt was dying and she died. I went to therapy. And one of the things I said with Ntr Seshat, I said, Anika, I said, I need to pray. I'm not praying to Jesus. I'm past that. I don't know where I am, but I know I'm not there. I need something. And so she gave me the Amasu and gave me other Kemetic prayers. And then I met the Latinas who explained Santeria to me. So those are my experiences of how something was opened up for me. So tonight we have Ìmò Òdó, who is a PhD student at Temple University. For those of you who this might be your first interaction with him. This young brother knows a lot. He was on another show with Omawale, and he stood out with the thing with one of his responses. And I was like, who is that? I want him on my show. And so, do you remember what you said? Because I remember what we were talking about. Do you remember?
Yeah. I was talking about twerking and ballerinas.
I forgot the ballerinas part. I remember.
Well, I went on a date with a Jamaican girl, and she was a trained ballerina, and she said that ballet was foundational to all dance. And I asked her if, when we went to a party, she would dance like a ballerina. And because we're Black people, we're Africans, and ballet is a European cultural art form. I mean, I'm not saying we don't do it too, but we should be clear on its origin and the aesthetic of it. It's whose culture it is.
She said that was the original dance form.
Well, when you go to dance school, they teach ballet as though it's universal to all dance. So what happens is you learn ballet before you learn jazz. You learn ballet before you learn blues, before you learn bebop. You learn ballet. So that's why I said ballet is a cultural foundation for European dance. So
right.
so what happens, and I was gonna go because I know you mentioned the word syncretic.
Right.
You know, I don't always like the word syncretic because I think it blurs lines. And you know, like it's moving beyond dance. You know, you use the word Santeria. Like I know Santeria. I'm not taking anything away from anyone. I'm just saying based on language and perspectives. I know the Yoruba people in Cuba call themselves Lakumi. So Lakumi in Yoruba means you belong to me.
Oh, I love that.
In Spanish, they're referring to the same structure, the same African spiritual system as Santeria, the cult of the saints. So in Spanish, cult of the saints, I mean that sounds like, I mean,
it sounds like a cult.
It's a Catholic perspective.
Yeah, it is
on the African religion. So that's why I said like the name of the religion or the names, it reflects a perspective. Names reflect a cultural vector. So a lot of the time, like when we're talking about things from an African perspective, it's important to recognize, you know, the ways that our ancestors understood themselves.
That's right.
And ultimately how who we were became either effaced or camouflaged or suppressed in some way. And the next generations did not necessarily recognize the ways that we codified and camouflaged our culture in order to survive the environments that we found ourselves in.
So before we go too far down there, I just want to kind of circle back to you being in your PhD and you're in the middle of writing your dissertation. Can you just explain for the people which what your discipline is, what your dissertation, if you want to share, what your dissertation is on, and then can you give us a little bit of a structure of African spiritual practices and how we see this iteration? It's mainly the same thing, but it's just the customs might be a bit different.
Yeah. So basically, you know, we came up with tonight's subject together. So the subject is directly related in some ways to my my research, my doctoral work. And basically the title of my dissertation proposal, you know, at the time, you know, it's morphing, it's becoming. So it was called The African Integrity of Our Story, Revisiting Afrocentric historiography. So basically, uh, my doctoral work is about why do we study African history, but more importantly, what is the moral imperative for uh, uh, intergenerational transmission?
So what
What
does moral imperative mean?
moral imperative means why must we transmit what we know to the next generation?
Mm,
Why is that important? Why do we have to do that? Why is that mandatory? Why is that an obligation? Why is
right.
that our responsibility? It's a moral imperative.
Mm.
So a lot of the time, we get caught up on uh, African history as a commodity. We get caught up on breaking ourselves apart or thinking about ourselves in objects and pieces in order to sell parts of ourselves.
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean is a lot of the time, uh, let's use an example of somebody from a book. Chancellor Williams. He wrote the book The Destruction of Black Civilization. One of the things that he says earlier in the book, in the intro to the book, he wrote the book in the 70s. He was explaining how if you read a bunch of people's biographies that are like 90 years old,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them have stories about how they went to school. Some nice white teacher told them, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" Uh, I want to be a lawyer. And the teacher says, "No, you should be a carpenter." Or, I want to be uh, uh, a pilot for an airplane. No, what makes you think you can be a pilot? I read it in a book, in a history book. There was a black pilot once. That's what the kid says. And the teacher says, "No, Johnny, don't you know Negroes come from a people with no history?"
Mm.
So that was regular during Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
That was nice white folks and Jim Crow letting you down easy, saying, "Don't look at Africa." That's basically what they're saying. Don't remember anything about yourself. You're a Negro. You're what we made you here in
And
this
that's it.
society.
Right. Yep.
So don't worry about being anything other than a beast of burden,
Mm.
right? So what I'm saying is that historicide, that omission of us from the greater commentary of world history is the precursor to the physical violence and terrorism that that is inflicted upon us. Sheikh Anta Diop basically says they have to kill you psychologically and spiritually, so you don't resist, so you don't
Right.
fight back,
We're gonna
so you
fight back.
don't so you don't retain any of who you are, and you go along with your own destruction.
Yep. You
So
fight
so
for it. You
so the
support it.
so our ancestors, even before the Ma'afa, understood there was imperative to transmit the knowledge that we had of survival from one generation to the next. So that's why Africans very intimately have a connection with their ancestors. Yes.
Mm.
You see, so your ancestors are the key to your survival. They're your memory, but your ancestors, in a immediate sense, the people who are living directly before you, are lesser spirits than the ancestors who sit at the beginning of time. The ones at the beginning of time are primordial ancestors.
Mm.
They're natural forces. They're nature. So the only reason we are here is because we are, in some form or way, incarnations of nature.
Mm-hmm.
We are them in the time we find ourselves, but they are before everything else. So if you understand, that's what African spirituality in many ways is trying. It's helping you understand the world, based on not just the matter of things, but the spirit of things.
Mm.
You
Mm.
see, so the spirit is eternal. You see, spiritual energy, cosmic energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's always existed. You see, so when we transition from one form to another, our ancestors had ways of marking those different transitions from one period in life to the next, and then through that cycle. So they knew. So our ancestors structured their realities the way that they understood the greater cosmos to be, and then they structured their societies that way too.
So
Yeah.
they structured the greater cosmos based upon their understanding of the cosmology, or
Yeah,
of.
so cosmology is cosmos
Mhm,
means universe.
mhm,
So our ancestors understood that everything that there is to know about the universe already exists
mhm,
inside of you.
mhm.
So as outside, so inside. You know, I think there's a word for it. There's like a law. You know,
As
as up,
above, so
so
below.
below. It's called the law of something. But the point I forgot. But basically the point I'm making, I think it's the law of correspondence. But
That sounds familiar.
but it's like, so our ancestors had a celestial orientation, so they can look at the sky and they can understand the composition of the entire universe as they could see, as far as they could see, as far as they could fathom and grasp. But then in order to understand how that information was relevant to them, it had to be introspective too.
Mhm.
So that's what we're talking. That's so a lot of times the larger the ideas get, the more mystified people get, because there's pieces that are missing, and a lot of the time we get comfortable to knowing everything.
We
Our
get, oh, okay. Say that. So there are some pieces missing, and we get comfortable knowing everything. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, what I'm saying is we don't know everything.
Right.
You have to humble yourself in that way. So
Mhm.
you know, so this is why epistemologies matter, because objectivity. I'll run an exercise with you. What does it mean to be objective?
To view something unemotionally and just to consider the facts.
Okay, so um fact is it contestable?
Absolutely. And it's also based upon someone's perspective. And then some people just lie, make stuff up.
Well, I would argue that for something for anyone to actually be objective, it means that they can't have any bias.
Right.
So the issue with
Mm.
objectivity for us, let's say when I'm coming into Africology, I'm coming to study African culture. Am I going to study African people as though I am not African?
Not possible.
So if I'm taking an objective position on my own ancestors, what does that imply? That's alienation. That's what we're looking at our history to fix. That's why we're looking back. That's why we're trying to reconnect. But
Right.
if we're only if methodologically, if ideologically or conceptually we have an alienation between our own nature
Hmm.
and our own ancestors, then there's a break in the continuity somewhere. That's the issue. We're trying to resolve that issue. We're trying to heal that connection. We're trying to restore that connection. You see, that's what the restoration of Ma'at is. Ma'at
Right.
is the restoration of order. So
That's
order
right.
in the universe, but your internal order as well.
That's correct.
You see, so you know, there's a reason why you say like you can speak Ma'at and then you must do Ma'at, because you know your words need to be congruent with your actions, or else it's not Ma'at.
Or it's, yep, or else it's not my aunt.
Like
It's
it's built into the language.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So speaking of my aunt, um, let's segue into our West African connection opening the way. So what is our West African culture and what is opening the way?
Okay. Well, yeah. So Opening the way is essentially about the creative or the initiating force that basically propels successive generations into the future, or people are coming from behind the upcoming generations. The doors open for them. So that means somebody invented something, they created something, they did something great, they contributed to a community in such a way that they made a way of life available to the people coming behind them. That's what opening the way means. So that has been, we talk about natural forces. Our ancestors identified the opener as a universal force or a universal principle. So they personified this universal principle. They understand this principle to be a person or a personification, a divinity. And in different cultures, the opener has different names. So the opener for the Haitians was Legba, or from West Africa, or Toussaint Louverture. Louverture is the opener. So if you understand, I'm trying to think of another example. Ptah is the opener in Kemet, because Ptah is the one who speaks the world into existence, right? So he opens his mouth, but like, I think it's important to understand that our ancestors had an idea of divinity. If you're first, if let's say a divinity is first, who created the divinity?
Well, Ma'at has no creation story.
The divinity created itself.
Right.
That's so there's out of the Nun, so you have those kinds of stories of the Nun, because this higher intelligence that created everything else had to be intelligent enough to create itself before it created everything else. So it's almost like a paradox. You see, it sounds elusive, but it's not elusive, because in African culture, there's not really there's no space between matter and spirit. Matter and spirit are the same. You when you speak to the spirit of things, you're speaking to some kind of matter. So that's why you start dealing with like metaphysical forces. That's why they say you want your thoughts to be congruent with your words and your actions, because your thoughts, depending on the nature of your thoughts, they can pollute your words.
Yep.
Right? And if they pollute your words, then that means you might have corrupt actions or bad actions. So you want so it's a lot of the time these kinds of things are what we need to recognize about them is principles never change, but agents do.
Agents.
So when you're an agent, a lot of time, I'm not talking about that spooky. I'm not talking about no espionage. I'm not talking about all that. I mean, if it's relevant, it's relevant, but that's not what I'm talking about. When we talk about agents, an agent is an actor.
Right.
So each person, each individual, you can have your principles and you act on them, or you don't. Some people have principles, but they don't have courage. So they don't act, they don't step up. That's why you have certain you have some Orisha, or some like Ogun is the principle of courage, but he's also the principle of truth. He has the right to speak. He has he always has permission. He has permission because he is just. You see, so that's why he is the swiftest attacker. You see, that's so if you understand that these principles are used to make a rationale for African survival given our conditions. You see, so that's why you have different expressions of the same divinity in different places.
So let's define Odisha.
Okay.
And let us know what is the similarity or the sameness, if you will, with Odisha and universal principle.
Yeah. So I use the word universal because it exists beyond the physical reality, or
Mm-hmm.
so it exists in the ancestral realm too. So that's metaphysical. That's the unseen world. So I mean, a lot of people, we have conversations about atheism and Marxism and socialism and these kinds of Eurocentric ideologies where they, even uh the German who believed God is dead and all that kind of stuff. Like African people have always understood that physical life uh exists parallel to
Mm-hmm.
spiritual life. So spirits and the living coexist and they communicate and they learn to communicate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So Orisha are aspects of the greatest divine force. Different personalities that represent different aspects of nature. So basically, each Orisha is in charge of one aspect of nature. So
So I'm gonna pause right there for 1 second. Each Orisha is an aspect of nature. That's what you said, right?
yeah,
So the Cliff Note version of how the Tamahu viewed Kemetic spirituality is, instead of understanding that the Orisha is a principle of nature, they said it was a god. And so they said the ancient Egyptians, and I'm using their language from their perspective, practiced, had many gods and goddesses, what was polytheistic, and that these Black people, and I'm using just a word just to bring it home,
mhm.
had many gods. That was the Tamahu, or European version, Greek version to be specific, their understanding of what we understood differently. Or let me say that again. They understood differently what we understood. We understood that it was a principle of nature. And there are many principles of nature, and nature is the one divine, the one God, to use that term. So this is an example of how bias has misrepresented our ancestral way of practicing spirituality by making it seem like we just had all these gods. Inherent
Well,
in thinking that someone believes that means they think that we don't know that there's one divine force that creates this. How can there be many divine, almighty divine
well,
forces?
this is why I said, like, because I watched the interesting debate. There was a Igbo man arguing with a Christian woman
Mm-hmm.
on YouTube or something like that. And it was interesting because basically the woman said, "In the beginning was the word," and basically she started getting into why she believes that Christianity has a monopoly over divinity. That's basically what her argument was, and she was basically saying that, like, uh, Christianity is monotheistic and African religions are polytheistic. And people don't always understand that the discourse of polytheism is a discourse of basically saying that um there these gods are lesser gods and the Christian God is the true God,
Right.
or the Islamic God is the true God, or Jesus is the true God. Like, so when people start doing, like, when people so and that's why I said the idea of divinity is supposed to connect you to the divine source of life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what divinity is. So what white people want to do is they want to sit themselves in that continuity. So when they want so if you think about a white validation complex, if you think about it, it's people responding to white people as though they are their parents.
Yep.
They're the people that they're the grown-ups in the room. So it works the same way if we're talking about African, if we're talking about the relationship we have to our ancestors, because the Christians, they say, oh, you have an issue with because you don't believe in God, you believe in your chi, you believe in your chi, you believe in your yourself,
right, your chakras.
So the thing is, there's no alienation from an African perspective between divinity and who you are as a sacred being. There's
Right.
there's an unbroken connection within African spirituality, so that
Right.
you wouldn't have an issue seeing a black face as sacred, as your father, as your mother, as your primordial. You wouldn't have that issue, but with that white Jesus hanging on the wall, I mean, not everybody for it hanging on the wall, but sometimes that idea of divinity being white or Caucasian, it shapes the way people identify and who they identify with. I mean, people will orient themselves towards foreign powers in Africa, and that's part of the religious conflict in Africa. You have Africans who think they're Arabs, and you have Africans who think they're Europeans, and they're fighting over the truth of these religions that are alien to Africa.
Period.
And
for the Negroes in the back. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make it like, because it's important to recognize that different groups of African people have very long histories related to different religions. So people have different theological traditions, and people.
You mean Abrahamic religions or African religion? The longevity, when you were saying very long history.
Yeah, the what I'm saying is the length of time that Islam and Christianity has been in Africa is important to acknowledge, because there are many people who are practicing their own culture and they're calling it Islam or they're calling it Christianity. And then there's some people who are practicing Islam and Christianity and calling it African spirituality. You see, so it's important, because a lot of the time it's hard for people to distinguish if they're not anchored in who it is that these African principles actually represent. And that's why it's good to recognize that these personalities they look like the people who
practice that particular spiritual or religion.
Yeah, so when people start, that's why I didn't want to I don't even know who you meant, but with Santeria, what happens is people still need to decolonize African spirituality, because what happens is we want to return to African culture, and we bring along the white images. We bring along the sacredness, or the desacralized divinities. Basically, they desacralize our ancestors, and then they have us venerating them instead of venerating our own ancestors. We need to, those images are important.
So when she explained Santeria to me, and I came back to the States, New York, one of my good friends practices Vodou. And I appreciate her so much, because she went to school here in Connecticut. She went to Spelman. I'm from Connecticut, and I went to Spelman. So, and she practices African spirituality. So it's like 3 lightnings in a bottle, all at the same time. And we've definitely had conversations. And I'm pretty sure she's the one who explained to me kind of what you're saying with Santeria. And, when I saw some of the images of it, I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Because historically, what happened in Cuba is not what happened in Haiti.
So I've come to understand that, on later down the road. But in the moment, I thought I found a part of African spirituality, because she explained it. Yeah, but and I don't diss Santeria for those who practice it, but for me, I need to have something that is African and not imagery is so important.
It is African, and Santeria is still African, but what it is it's not politicized.
So what do you mean by that? If you see the images that, again, anybody who practices Santeria, I am not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying, for me, imagery is important. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but in order to practice Santeria, there has to be a Catholic component to it, which that's not something that I would do.
Well,
I
that's
wouldn't
that
have.
that was my point. That was why I was saying that, like I don't want to say that Santeria isn't real. Like, it is.
It is. No, I'm not saying that either.
It's a thing. It is somebody's
Right.
thing. What I'm saying is the historical relationship that African people have to the components that come into what we're calling Santeria or Voodoo, or in other, Kumina, or, in different places that, you have to deal with the history
Right.
of the
those
people,
people.
of
Right.
those people. So that's why I said Cuba is not Haiti.
Right.
Like, yeah.
I mean, and I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't practice Santeria, but I held on to it because I was like, wow, this is great. And because even though at that point I had been introduced to Kemetic spirituality, I still wanted to be rooted in some form of West African spirituality as well.
Yeah.
And so to hear, our enslaved ancestors, came into the Americas, and this was one of the ways and forms that our ancestors practiced, during that time. It was I felt like that was an opening moment for me. I went back to the city. I bought some waist beads, and I still have those, my very first set of waist beads, because it meant so much to me to finally, break through, kind of have that opening of the way, for myself. So,
Yeah.
can you explain what is a Neturu, what is an Orisha, and just conceptually, and then kind of give us some parallels, like you mentioned Ogun. Who is Ogun? Who would be the parallel of Ogun in in Kemetic spirituality? Who's the opener of the way in Kemetic spirituality? Who's the opener of the way in Vodou?
So all right. So one of the things that I wanna start with, because the reason we talked about the polytheism thing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I realize is, from the perspective of Abrahamic religions, when you look at Kemetic spirituality, they like to focus very heavily on the Trinity. The Trinity is prime, is first. The primacy of the Trinity is important.
Mm-hmm.
But but Christianity in particular holds very closely to the Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so our ancestors in Kemet, the Trinity is where they began, but there were infinitely more Netaru. And I think that's important to highlight, because it's the same way that the Orisha have an uncountable number of there's an unlimited number of Orisha.
Right.
You see, so you have to understand it in that way. You have to understand that these are natural forces that have existed for a long time. So when you come to know what they are or who they are, there are others who know who they are first and who have known. So you have to have that level of humility to not just be like, oh, I'm the one that knows it all. You're dealing with a line, an ancestral line, a connection, in someone's a thread in someone's history. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to think about it in that way in the world. So a lot of the time, that's why it's important for African spirituality. I think it's good for people to become familiar for themselves with the what it is that they want to know, because You should never depend. That's one of the most important aspects, in my opinion. Your inner self. You know, the Yoruba, they say you have your ori, which is your calabash, your head, your skull, your melon. You know, I don't know if anybody knows what a calabash, West African, of course, people should know. But
what's a calabash? I haven't heard that word in a long time.
it's like a squash, but it has like a hard shell.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, here,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. A friend of mine, she got back from Gabon, and this is one of the things that they were doing. So people eat out of these, they cook out of these. Like they have big ones, they have small ones. So it's so the calabash. The reason I said calabash is because ori and calabash are the same. They mean the same thing.
what do they mean?
Ori means your head.
Mm-hmm.
So calabash is
Your head.
your ori is the calabash of life. You see, you don't split my melon. You know, you'll see the wet part inside. You see, it's the same thing. So if you think about it, that's what it is. So your ori, that's the first word in orisha.
Right.
Right. So your ori is the orisha whose family you belong to, or the one that's on your head, the one that guides you, right? So a lot of the time people belong to certain families of orisha when they become initiated into knowledge of about a certain area of nature or a certain area of society. There are orisha who preside over the knowledge of that area in society. So that's why I said like the orisha, they're in charge, and it's important to know that the singular divine force that created everyone is not separate from the orisha. The orisha represent aspects
Right.
of that singular divine force. So
let me stop you right there.
people say monotheism or they say polytheism, what they're really getting into is discourse between Christians and atheists, or this subversive discourse with Abrahamic religions. Because when we're on our own, African people were the first people to populate the planet. So we were the first people to name God. So if they want to say that our God is illegitimate because it is not in their language, it is not in a European language or an Arabic language or a foreign language to Africa, then that's why you get into these religious conflicts with people, because it's a clash of worldview. You see, you're dealing with people fighting over worldviews and languages and cultures. That's why the Romans call people barbarians. It's like, we don't know what they're talking about. Cut their head off. Like that's what I'm saying. So you have to understand that the religious conflicts, they need to be it's a broad discussion, because religion is one of those subjects that makes people very hostile very quickly.
Very quickly. So I want to go back to something you said when you were saying the orishas are aspects of one. Did you say divine force?
Yeah.
So
the creative force of the universe.
The creative force of the universe. Christians might say Almighty God, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. These are the terms that have been used to describe God from a European Christian perspective. And so as from an African perspective, we recognize that there are different aspects of one divine force, one creator of everything. And I just remember when I was at the shrine of Ma'at, physically at the house before COVID, around, I don't know, 2010, 14, something. And Anika and Jabari trying to explain that to us. It's a difficult concept to grasp at first, because so much of our worldview, even when you try to be as African as you can be, a lot of it is still centered from a European perspective. I mean, we're speaking English for crying out loud. I was about to say for Christ's sake, right? So we're speaking English. So even our conversation about having an African viewpoint is not even in an African language.
Well,
So and for
That's
people
okay
who,
though.
well, so before we go there, for people who are hearing this for the first time, there different aspects are not the same as different gods. And to make it even more simple, because I remember trying to explain this to some teenagers when I substitute taught at a high school.
Well, there's a reason I don't use the word gods.
It's almost like having different personalities. And it's still that same person, but different personalities. Now, I wouldn't say that this is something that you should write on an essay or you should do a presentation on it or anything like that. But we understand that one person does not become many people when you see a different side to that person. So it's kind of the same thing when you look at one divine force, and there are different aspects to that. And two very easy ones that I give that people understand is Shu and Tefnut. Tefnut, moisture, Shu, wind, breath. And when you explain that, everybody understands moisture, water, etc. And I always like it when it snows because I say that this is the Tefnut of the North or Tefnut in Connecticut or whatever, because it's moisture, it's just solid. So if you look at it,
she locked up in the ice box.
It's like that in Connecticut and New York, wherever I am. So anyway, I'm definitely going to hand the mic back to you, but I just want to make sure that people who are understanding this for the first time understand Africans were the first to put a name on God. We did that. And the concept of it and grasping the understanding of it. And when you have something with the enormity of a force that's always been here and will always be here, to understand it functionally, at times you are looking at aspects of it so you can have a sliver of an understanding of that particular component in the form of the divine that it's in at that time. So Kemetite spirituality, they are called Neteru. And what we were talking about earlier, you have Orisha. It's kind of similar, different names.
Or in Haiti, they have what they call Loa.
Loa. Mm-hmm.
So the Loa are the laws of nature. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said, like, people who committed themselves to a Loa or an Orisha, they served that force. They served that. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm saying, like, it's important, because I think those laws are. That was why I said I don't call them gods, because that's German.
The Greeks do. I was saying the Greeks call them gods. We don't call them gods. That's how Greeks interpreted.
Even so, mm-hmm. with the Greeks, for example, the Greeks. Sheikh Anta Diop and Martin Bernal essentially said Greece, or Hellenes, was like a colony of Kemet before it was its own civilization. So that's like an aspect that they kind of don't really deal with, mm-hmm. when they talk about their own history. But it's important, because if you think about, like, Zeus is the Caucasian effaced version of Amun.
What does effaced mean? And tell us who Amun is.
Amun is the hidden one, the father of darkness, the one, like, so if you think about Amun Ra, it's the sun. When the sun is out in the daytime, that's Ra, is the light, is the sun. It's the heat, it's the fire, Ra. You, depending on the way it's written in the Hmt Ntr, it can mean many different mm-hmm. iterations of the same kind of light force energy, heat or sun force, whatever you want to call it, Ra. It's that. And basically Amun is the opposite, but it's also another aspect of the same divinity, because the bringer of light is also the one who creates it out of darkness. Mm-hmm. So basically Amun is the hidden one. So the Greeks, their concept of the patriarch of the Greek pantheon, Zeus, is basically a white facing of an African divinity.
White face.
That's
No,
what
it's
people
true.
do. People, when they learn something, they take it, make it look like
And
themselves.
make it look like themselves.
So yeah.
So I just want to go over some of the questions we have in the chat. We have Arek Aru. I hope I'm saying this right. Orisha are ancestors who have been deified. Do you have that understanding of Orisha?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's the same. Like if you, for example, in Kemet, Wasir, Asar, they say he actually walked the earth. He's probably uh, a Nubian, uh, a Nubian king who ruled in the distant past, so far back that he became a mythological figure. He became deified. You see that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So the Orisha is the same thing with Shango. Shango was probably a great king. You see, and in the distant past, who the people still remember and tell stories of. It, so
Who is Shango? And what does he do?
so Shango is the the emperor. He's the divinity of war, but he's also the divinity of rulership or thunder and lightning. So he's quiet until he drops on you like a thunderbolt.
Ah,
You know?
okay.
So,
Okay.
so that's that. So that's why I mean, it's like these myths. I like the way Tony Browder says, although myths are not true, they contain truth.
There's truth in
So
the truth in the
there's an
myth.
essence, there's a
Mhm.
seed, there's a seed, there's an essence in the knowledge, in the memory, in their names, in their stories. You see, so
Mhm.
that's what we have to. And there's ethics in their stories. There's ways that we are. There's conduct that's represented in their stories, and that conduct, um, depending on how intimately we develop relationships with these ancestors, that conduct can be reflected in our lives again today. So that's why when we're talking about opening the way,
Mhm.
the opener is the one who opens the doorway for many things. Normally, the opener for communication. When anybody does a libation or any kind of ritual or ceremony, you begin with the opener to open the doorway of communication to the ancestors. The reason why is because the that the almighty divine supreme creative force in the universe is so powerful. You need somebody to speak on your behalf. You need another. You need a more proximate, more powerful spirit to speak on your behalf. Who is more proximate to that divine force if not the people or the spirits in the ancestral realm? So that's why you need to continue to, with increasing frequency, you communicate with your ancestors. I mean, imagine I never saw you before. I never saw you before. I never said your name. I never said hi to you. But now I'm asking you for something. You see, I'm not saying, I'm not blocking anybody's blessings. I'm just saying the more frequently you communicate and establish your relationship and foster your relationship with your ancestors, the more reward
Mhm.
that you might see in your life. I mean, I
So
mean, yeah. I mean, people. I mean, this is what people get into prophecy and providence, and they told me this. It's like who's whispering in your ears. If it's not your ancestors, then you should be worried about that.
right. And also when you do spend the time to communicate with your ancestors, you will begin to know the difference between them speaking to you and the things you're saying to yourself in your head. It's from practice. It would be like if we turned off all the cameras and the lights and I was speaking and Emo was speaking. you should be able to tell the difference between our voices.
If you close your eyes, right? And do you know? All right, so
I was about to do
I saw somebody brought up the Nun. Yeah, the primordial water. I see them bringing it up again. If you think about primordial water, the reason they're talking about primordial water, if you close your eyes, that is the deepest darkness that you can probably ever see. So that deep darkness is inside of you.
It's inside of you.
Is it solid? Is it solid? Is it fluid?
You can definitely you can access
everything. It's all of it
through meditation.
There you go.
You want to go into a different realm. You want to do what he's saying and access that space. Man, there's nothing like sitting still in a meditative position where you're sitting straight up and your sits bones are connected to a hard surface and you are comfortable, legs crossed, with your chin down, eyes closed. You're breathing through your belly and not your chest, like an 80s aerobics move. That's how you get into the space where you're really able to kind of discern different levels of consciousness. And once you do that for the first time, then you understand what it's like to have different messages and different like different spaces in our minds. Meditation will take you there. I want to read some of these comments because I haven't read the comments pretty much from the beginning. We have Jason Holmes, who is a member of the Shrine of Ma'at, Sinette Cheryl, and Sinette Ashley. They are members of the Shrine of Ma'at. Hello to Darlene McCrae from Omalara Infafunke. I hope I said that correct. And let's see. So I'm going to save this question a little. I'm going to go through the comments and save this question. Sinette Ashley asked, didn't they have to hide the practices under the colonizers' religion for its survival? We're going to circle back. Ankh Ma'at, Ra Amen Aoun. She's a member of the Shrine of Ma'at as well.
Peace.
Let's see. Yep. Okay. So I addressed some of the rest of these. So in getting back to the Orisha and some of the other religions, can you explain how why would someone call it a syncretic religion? What is the difference between Santeria and Lukumi? And where did they come about? Like why were those created?
Well, synchronize. The reason I take a bit of an issue with the term synchronization, or syncretism. That's the word people use, syncretism. Is because I think it assumes kind of a neutral power dynamic at play. You see, like as though that there's some kind of equal sharing of culture and equal sharing of power and terms and it's not that it's not neutral in that way because there's terms, there's power dynamics, and there's institutions in society that reinforce some communities and allow their religion and their practices to proliferate in society, and there are others that are continuously repressed. So I think it's important to recognize that the culture of secrecy that is prevalent in African spiritual communities, spiritual traditions, and stuff like that is really the result of centuries of repression. So if you understand it in that way, then that's why you start realizing that some of our people are trying to put the pieces back together and don't always have all the pieces. So it's important for us to rebuild communities and institutions to restore these traditions. We can't think of ourselves as static. One of the other principles, we talked about the Nun. I'm thinking about the Ma'at Mer, and the Nun is the water, the wavy water. There's a word in the Ma'at Mer called wenen, which is basically the rabbit with
Mhm.
the two strokes of water under it. And Wenen means to exist, to be in Medu Ntr. But it's a rabbit. Rabbits don't ever sit still. So on a molecular level, this is true of people, and not just people, matter. All matter on a molecular level vibrates. So all existence is contingent on motion. Life is contingent on motion. All kinetic energy is the energy of life. Motion is life. If you stop moving, that's not good. You
Mhm.
see, you know, so if we think about it in that way, we should not think of ourselves as either stuck uh because of whatever happened to us in the history. We're never stuck. There's a phrase that with Sankofa and Chui, and it basically means it is not forbidden to remember what was lost. It is not forbidden to retrieve. So basically, Sankofa means go back and fetch. So if I actually spoke Chui, I could probably tell you uh, the phrase a bit better. But the point is, this African people always look back because we live in a cycle of life. It's
We sure
ongoing.
do. Yes, we do. I have
So
that
this
tattooed on my
you can
wrist.
always restore what was lost. You can always remember what was dismembered. So that's important. That's important to remember. So don't let anybody try to corner you and say you are illegitimate because you don't know as much as the next person, because everybody uh begins somewhere.
That's
Everybody has to pick up somewhere. So that's important to know and to be encouraged and to find a community or other people who are embarking on the same quest to find more information. You guys can benefit and help each other, make your community stronger. So
That's true.
yeah.
So when we look at let's talk a little bit about voodoo, and we have voodoo in West Africa and Benin, Togo, in that area. We have voodoo in Haiti and in New Orleans. Let us know, what are the similarities, what are the slight differences, and what's a Loa? Let's revisit that. And what's a Bebe? I asked you like 4 questions.
Yeah, so my boy actually just wrote his I'm gonna plug my man's my friend
This
my
sound
college.
like black dudes. I'm gonna plug my man's and just held up the book. Go ahead.
Yeah, my boy, his name is Kimonia Johnny, and he wrote his book, his
Spell
dissertation. Kimoni is Yoruba, Kimoni, and then Yao, like Yao is Ghanaian, and then Johnny,
How you spell Yao? Yao.
Yaw.
Okay, and
I know
then
some people say Yawo. I don't know. So it's Yao. That's uh yeah. So, but basically, the title of the book is interesting because normally books about they call it the Haitian Revolution. The name of this book is the African Revolution in Haiti, and I think that's important
mm,
because the Africans fighting against the French and the British and the Spanish continued. They picked up the fight that the indigenous people were waging against the Europeans.
quick
So
question. Ayti. Am I spelling that correctly?
yeah, so the spelling is spelled phonetically. It's spelled the way you would say it in Haitian Creole. I don't speak the language, but I understand the importance. They say Haiti instead of Haiti. Like Haiti is apparently the French language imposition on the name of the island.
Okay.
Haiti was the name that the indigenous people who lived on the island called their own country before the Europeans showed up, talking about San Salvador and Santo Domingo and San Domong, and you know the whole
Saint
island
this,
was
Saint that.
the whole island was Haiti, the land of high mountains. So when the Africans freed themselves from slavery, restored or built a nation or took control of the country, they restored the name of the country to its indigenous name. So
I
yeah. So it's the African Revolution in Haiti.
Haiti.
Yeah.
It's
So
interesting that that's the name of his title, because whenever I speak about the Haitian Revolution, I say the Africans who were in Haiti. That's the term I used.
yeah,
I've been corrected. Um, I say the Africans who were in Haiti who whooped Napoleon's ass.
yeah,
That's the title I use when
that's
I talk
fine.
about it.
I like that.
You like that one?
Yeah. I mean, and you asked about Vivis, like, so
Mhm.
like there's one on the cover.
Can you hold that closer up to the camera so people can see what it is? And what up a little bit? Yeah. What is a veve? Like, what is that?
So think about it like this. We were talking about your Ori, the this think about a circle. Think about a circle. Draw a circle.
Mm-hmm.
You have an axis. You have the axis of, you have life, and then you have death, but then you have creation, and then you have eternity.
Mm.
So the crossroads is normally where we find ourselves in the center of.
Mm-hmm.
In the center, yeah. So
So it would be right here.
it's your head. I mean, I'm being animated,
Right.
but it's your head. The point I'm saying is that circle, or this circle, it represents your head. So these different symbols represent aspects of a given orisha, or a given or a given loa. So basically, so basically, I'm giving very uh generic overview. Basically, different loa are gonna have different patterns. Like on my phone, like one of the loa that I know myself to be associated with is Dambala. So Dambala is supposed to be this the Sky Father, the Python, the sky snake, the one who knows all, the one who knows the knowledge. He's the divinity of intelligence, in the same way that Jehuti is in Kemet, or maybe I mean Legba is another one. Is I might be not Legba. Yes. And that's the thing. Technically, because they're all part of the same family, you have personifications that embody different aspects of
Mm-hmm.
Orisha that you would think are different personalities. So it's important to recognize that there's not always so many contradictions. They're all in complementary distribution
That's correct.
as a part of our African family.
That's correct.
So there's no contradictions. If you start reading, you're like, yeah, I think, I think I'm a little bit like this one. I'm a little bit like that one. You know what? You're like all of them.
You're like all of them.
That's the important thing.
You
So
are all of them.
for exactly. So what's important is you recognize what the distinctive characteristics of your inner self are. Who are you? What your role is. Once you good in who you are, then you're like, yeah, like, maybe I am acting a little like Oshun, sometimes. But maybe sometimes I do act like Ogu. Today's an Ogu day. And then tomorrow is I mean, I'm just saying, I'm speaking loosely and generically, because I'm not actually speaking about specific uh uh ceremonies. I'm not, or rituals. I'm not speaking about anything specific. I'm speaking generically for somebody who is just getting exposure to know and want to learn more. I think the best way to do it is immerse yourself. Just dive right in and just learn a little more, and you'll be surprised at how many people want to help you along the way.
Yes. And yeah. And you'll be surprised how there's a certain level of ease that comes with it, even if you don't know exactly what, why, or how, or where, or what. It's our natural, it's our original connection to the
And
divine, so it
and the
fits.
most and the intuition thing is important, because the more you immerse yourself, the more that your ancestors are going to speak to you. You may not be conscious of it, but they're always talking to you. They're always communicating with you. If you just have to have ears to hear. That's all it is.
So in the oh, okay. So Oba Pedro Velez said when speaking about Dambala, it's the same as Olodumare.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
You can see that, okay. Yeah. Let's see. Do the Orisha ever combine like the Netzer example, Amen or Seneferu? Can you explain that one? Do you understand this question?
Yeah.
You understand it? I don't understand.
Because
combine. What does he mean by combine?
So let me put it like this. Some Netaru personify such a similar force or principle. Sometimes it's difficult, or you won't immediately distinguish between the two personifications. So sometimes you'll look and you'll say, oh, that's Aset, and actually it'll be Mut,
right?
Or it'll be Ma'at, or it'll be Hataru, or it'll be one of the other ones, or it may be none of them. It may actually be it may not actually be a Netru. It may actually be someone that we know of. We have other documentation of who actually walked, or we know of who walked the earth. Like they're not so remote. You see what I mean? Like so like it might be like Nefertiti that looks like Mut. You see what I mean?
Right.
So it's important to understand that even if we are our ancestors, we are still ourselves as individuals. That's that. I mean, I think sometimes people become a hive mind. You can still have you still have your own personalities.
What's a hive mind?
Hive mind means you collapse yourself into like I'm everybody. I don't know, like one of those crazy communist cults. Not like a communist, not like I have an issue with all communist cults. I'm talking about them people who got like a haven, like they be out there in the woods, and
we're not going to the hoods.
But that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of the time.
So I don't think that. So Oba, I don't think that Imo was saying they combine, but there are similar elements in different
they don't combine.
Orisha or different Netzeru that sometimes you might see a similar energy in both.
They don't combine. They represent
the same energy. They like represent or represent. Yeah. But represent meaning presenting and then presenting it again. It's the same energy in different Neteru or different Orisha.
Because think about it like this. Oshun is the ocean. We talk about Oshun, the sweet water, and Yemoja is the river, and Oya is the rain. They're all water.
Wait, say that again. I was reading this comment. Say that again.
I said Oshun is the ocean, Yemoja is the river, and Oya is the rain.
I think that's the other way around. Yemaya is the ocean, and Oshun is the river. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
I think you just made a mistake because we've spoken about this, and you.
Well. But this is also what I'm saying.
Right.
Depending on the environment, depending on where you are, there's not a contradiction between Oshun being the river or the ocean, depending on where you live. Like depending on where you are. I mean, if you got kidnapped in Senegal, and somehow you end up in Brazil,
right? When
you find the Amazon River, are you going to be arguing with each other about no? That's Oshun. That's not Yemoja. The big water is the big water. You're gonna be like they're all here. They came with us. You see, all of the mothers of water are here. That you see, so what I'm saying is those are the popular, or the, I don't want to say popular. Those are the more dominant Orisha, the ones that people know.
The people know the most,
the
yeah.
more widely known. But they have other incarnations that are maybe lesser known, but are personifying the same natural force.
You know, and I think also, Oba, Pedro, I don't want you to get too caught up into the literal fixed understanding. If in Connecticut, Connecticut is a little bit more rural than people think. We have the Farmington River, and in the summer you can tube down the Farmington River, and so it's not a small river like a little trickle, but it's a legit river. It isn't something that I would say is like an ocean, right? So that would be Oshun. But when you go to what is now called Egypt and you're on the Nile River, if you've ever been on a boat in the Nile River, you can take one of those trips if you ever go. That's the ocean. That feels like an ocean, especially when you compare it to little old Farmington River in Farmington, Connecticut, even though they both say river. So you take something like the Nile. At what point is it not a river and it's an ocean? At what point is it an ocean and is it not an ocean and it's a river?
Well, and I think that's why. Sorry.
Yeah. So in that aspect, I think the point is, yes, we have one that's a river, and yes, we have one that's an ocean. But then we have an Orisha that's a river and an Orisha that's an ocean. But at some point, there's a similarity, a similar energy in both. That is something that you can experience in both. We're not trying to. It's not exchanging it in a hardcore way. That's kind of like a European perspective.
You don't have to. There's no either or.
Right.
When it's all of us, when it's our family, when it's our cosmic family, it's all us. Everybody's here. You see. So depending on whose names you speak, when you speak the names of the ancestors, you invite them. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we lament those who we don't know their names because we want to invite them, but we don't know their names because of the Ma'afa. So the thing is, it's important to know, like, just because you're not always speaking the name of who it is, just know that it's the forces of nature that are with you. So it's largely, it's intuitive too. So you make it conscious when you know their names. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the language of the ancestors. That's the important thing, because to me, in the language of our ancestors is what actually connects us to the divinity. Because if they speak think about it like this: if they've been speaking a language for a long time, they speak their language,
right?
So they like to speak their language, and they like it when you speak their language to them.
Right.
So I mean, you think about them like people. I mean, people have things that they like in their life. So if you reflect on the stories of the Orisha, it becomes clear what kinds of things
that culture liked.
This Orisha likes. So if you want to make offering and sacrifice to that Orisha, then you give you place those kinds of things on your altar, because your altar is the place where you go to commune with your ancestors. You build a community. So so you never have to feel alone. That's what altars and all of that. I'm bad about that stuff because I was an atheist for a very long time, and I started like learning about African spirituality and stuff, and I was like, yeah, this actually does make a world of more sense than anything these Caucasians were teaching us. So I came into it, and I just, but it is about immersion. It's about immersing yourself in
Mhm.
your own culture. It's about wrapping yourself in your own ancestors, in your arm, binding yourself. Let them give you a hug.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So we coming to a close in about, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I want to focus on what the way is in opening the way. What is the way and who opens it? And why does it need to be open? Like, what does it mean to open the way?
All
Let's
right. Well,
start there.
I liked it because I first understood it in a political context. So opening the way uh uh is basically, think about, I'm only gonna make it negative for 2 seconds because I think it'll make the opening the way point clear.
All right, go ahead.
Because of slavery, our ancestors, when they were being terrorized on these death camps that they're calling plantations, and survival was not guaranteed at all. It was, people were reluctant to believe that they or their children would maybe see a different life other than what they were living on the plantation. So the one who opened the way was the one who opened the way for the next generation to have life, to live, whether that's during slavery or before slavery. You open the way for the next generation to live, and live hopefully better than the conditions that you were living in. So
Mm-hmm.
the reason I'm thinking about like openers, I'm thinking there's a reason why people call Harriet Tubman the Black Moses.
Mm-hmm.
See, Moses was an opener. See, that's the metaphor. He's the door opener, because he opened the way for, in the Bible, for the Israelites, those people who were in Kemet or Egypt when they got expelled by Amos the first and sent to Western Asia. You know, Moses was the one who sent him over there, Amos. So he opened the way for them to leave his country. He was basically like, yeah, leave. So if you understand it in that context, it's the same thing with Toussaint Louverture in Haiti. He opened the way to end slavery and led the way, paved the way to national independence. He opened the way for the Haitians to become a nation. So if we think about it on an individual context, opening the way means understanding your pathway through life, your destiny. So the problem, so in terms of black nationalism, black people, the problem, black nationalists are, the whole black nationalism argument is basically, how do black people control their own national destiny, their collective destiny as a people? That's the nation question. So so Toussaint Louverture and the Haitian revolutionaries are, they're revolutionaries because they changed the way that Africans were living, and they opened the way to become a nation. So when I'm thinking about opening, the way, I'm thinking about self-determination, African people opening the way to live as Africans again, to live full lives. So there are obstacles to that way. So once the way is open, there are obstacles on the road. So Legba opened the way, but Ogu had to clear the road. You see, so after Toussaint opened the way, Dessalines had to clear the road. He had to clear the obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I mean, like, so if you understand that, like, these principles are principles that our ancestors identified in in based on their memory of what the society they had in Africa was, that's what they used to structure the new reality that they found themselves in America. So when I think about opening the way, I'm thinking about opening the way for for us to be free, to liberate ourselves. That's, to me,
That's
opening the way is liberation.
That's right.
Yeah. So some
Because if we're
people,
not talking about liberation, we ain't talking about nothing.
opening the way is liberation.
That's what I'm saying.
Some
We
people use the word liberation, and then what they talking about don't sound like liberation to me. You see that? So I use the word opening the way because I was trying to make it plain. The way they say Malcolm X made it plain. Sometimes people, they use these, like they be talking about black liberation, and then they spend all their time talking about Asia.
I've not heard that. What is that? What? They talk about black liberation, then they start talking about Asia.
The Asiatic black man?
Oh God. Okay, I know what you're talking about now. Let's not bring that term up. I never liked that term. It didn't make any sense to me because I always knew Africans were here first. So how are you going to have an adjective of a group of people that came after you to modify who you are, the original man?
Well, and that's why I said, like it's subversive discourse. It's like you're revolting, or you're rebelling, or you're resisting, but you're still trapped in that anti-position. So the problem is we don't want to be on one side or the other of their dialectics. We don't want to be the master or the slave. We want to we want to exist on our own terms. That's why, like, when we start talking about African spirituality, a lot of the time those are the Africans that were maroons. You're not gonna, like, the ones that were on the plantation. Yeah, if they were camouflaging, they had to be in deep cover. But if our culture was to proliferate the African spiritual traditions, it was normally among the maroon communities. You see, because Europeans, they're not going to compete with you about the truth. They're like, look, this is the one way, and you're going to die at the stake if you say otherwise.
They're not going to compete with you with the truth.
No, they know they lost that one. It's not even a question for them. They'll tell you they lost, and they'll still do you in.
So I want to read Arek Aru's comment. Even though we know that there was never a group of people in Kemet called Hebrews, Jews, or Israelites, because that story is mythology. So just want to make that clear.
They're the Amu, or the Hyksos. If you want to know, like, I mean, if you want to read more than just the Bible about that subject, I would tell you to look at the Hyksos. The Hyksos are the first foreigners to invade Africa, the first Asiatic invaders of Africa. They came into Lower Kemet. They came into the Nile Delta in maybe like 17 BC, which is like maybe around the 15th dynasty, I believe. So they were not a dynasty. They came in as traders, trade like merchants. People. They were many different groups of people in Western Asia who came into the Nile Valley and began to trade, and they were engaged in commerce, and they ultimately consolidated political power and usurped the power of the pharaoh, and they took control of the lower of Lower Kemet. So when they took control of Lower Kemet, that's when you have coexisting dynasties in Upper Kemet and Lower Kemet during what is essentially what they call, when you read the large chronology of pharaonic Kemet or dynastic Kemet, the 20 to 30 different dynasties, you're going to have what you call the Old Kingdom, then you have the intermediate period, then you have the Middle Kingdom, then you have the second intermediate period, and then you have the New Kingdom. That's normally the way that the Egyptologists break down the chronology of dynastic Kemet. So around the time of the second intermediate period is the time that we're talking about with the Amu. So the Amu or the Hyksos, the word Hyksos actually does mean the rulers of foreign lands. So our ancestors identified these people from Western Asia as foreigners, but they took control of, and then they tried to become pharaohs. They tried to create their own dynasty, and the pharaoh Kamos, who's the son of uh Ahotep. I think her name is Ahotep, and the father was Sennacherib. Is it? I forget. Basically, they were the ones who drove the Hyksos out of Lower Kemet. It was like the Haitian Revolution in the ancient world. So basically, they drove them out of Lower Kemet and reestablished the 18th dynasty. That's what they call the golden dynasty, or that's when Kemet reached its furthest territorial boundaries. That's when it became the largest empire it ever had become, in the 18th dynasty. So that the Africans in Upper Kemet came to the south, or came to the north, came to the Nile Delta to expel the Hyksos, and the pretense that they used was the restoration of Ma'at. To restore Ma'at, they had to remove or displace the agents of Isfet, or the Amu, the harbingers of chaos and disorder from the foreign lands. You see, so that's how they rebuilt their own society. So if you think about these intermediate periods, Kemet, Africa, has been ongoing for so long in history. There has been periods where foreigners have taken control and Africans have taken control back. So we don't know that pendulum in history, because we don't always have a long view, a long view of African history. We don't actually begin from our beginning. We begin African history from the entry points of foreigners. So sometimes when we look at African history, we get into we break it apart based on episodes. Like next time on Dragon Ball Z. That's how we break down our history sometimes. And that's okay, because sometimes you got to focus on one thing at a time. But the important part is we need to know A comes before B. We need to know what happened first, so that way we can follow the chronology and keep our feet on the ground in Africa. Because the way Sheikh Anta Diop says, he says, if you don't connect the history of ancient Egypt to the history of the rest of the African continent, then you'll be suspended in the air. You'll be suspended, because Egypt is the Greeks. That's the Greeks' entry point into Kemet. Yes. That's what Egypt is. So if you start going back into the history books and you start looking at everything, and everything is telling you ancient Egypt, ancient Egypt, ancient Egypt, ancient Egypt, ancient Egypt, then how are you studying? The Greeks didn't show up until the 25th or 6th. It's not the 25th. That's is the 26th, 27th dynasty. I forgot. It's something like that. They show up last. They show up late. So if you're studying the first 4 or 10 or 15 or even 20 dynasties in Kemet, there's no reason for you to be using the word Egypt. Right. There's no reason, like, at all. Like, so it's a misnomer. So and that's why I said, like, you have to understand the succession of kings emerging from inner Africa into the Nile Delta. You have to understand that the Africans who built the pyramids, the pharaohs, they said the land of the ancestors is Kush, or upriver, or Uganda, Sudan, Ethiopia. They're going further into Africa. That's where they come from. They come down the river. So the Europeans don't like people to basically explain. They don't want to deal. They don't want to say that the people who are the progenitors of classical Nile Valley civilization came from inside of Africa. They didn't come from Asia. They didn't come from Sumeria. They didn't come from Greece. They didn't come from Assyria. They didn't come from anywhere but inside of Africa. You see, but they'll tell you aliens built the pyramids before they tell you that part.
Say that again. Say that again. They will say aliens built the pyramids before they admit African blacks built that pyramid.
Dr. Ben, people focus on ancient Egypt without realizing Dr. Ben wrote the book Egypt, Child of Nubia. And you see, like, it's a child of Nubia. Nubia is older. The white people just stopped digging because they know there's no question they're black people.
He said they stopped digging. He was like, "We give up."
No, they were like, yo, like, there's no question. These Nubians are definitely black. There's no question. The Egyptians, all of these invasions, they give the white people cover to distort the history. Yep. Say, like, oh, well, see, this is why we belong here. But yeah, so I digress.
No, that was good. So yes, Egypt is a new word from Greeks. We who know better eliminate that word, and that's fair. And that's right.
It is a country. I mean,
so I use the word Egypt so that people there has to be an entry point into understanding this. If you start off with Kemet, they might not know you're talking about Egypt.
Well, Kemet is still Kemet.
But here's my point. When I was at Spelman, when I was in Atlanta, I was looking for Black God because I was like, I'm sick of this. Mm-hmm. I know we were here first when it was just Africans and God. What was that conversation? That's what I'm trying to find. Like that. That's how simply I had it.
Yeah.
To hear the word Kemet, there was a DJ. I think his name was DJ Kemet. I heard the word Kemet, but didn't know what it was. If someone had said that's ancient Egypt, and the hieroglyphs, and I'm using those terms, shows the spirituality, then that's what I would have, boom. That's what I was looking for the whole time. But because I didn't know the word Kemet, and because I had not heard the word Hmt Ntr, I just missed it. So I hear you, and you're right. We need to understand the timeline for the word Egypt. But when especially on a platform like this, if I'm talking generally to people, I'm going to use that word as an entry point so they know physically where we are, and then you let them know what Kemet is,
well,
Nubia, just a second, so that they understand, like, that word is, not our word, that's the Greek word, but that is farther down later in the conversation. Once someone is able to kind of like get brought in, I wish, oh my God, when I listened to Rihanna and she's like, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. When I first came into this and I realized that I was in Atlanta in the 90s with Shrine of the Black Madonna, like I would walk around places, like I went into the Shrine of the Black Madonna, they had an Ankh, but I did not know what it was. And all the 90s hip hop dudes who had Ankhs, I knew it was African, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know the name, didn't know what it was. And I was so close. You want to talk about somebody being pissed for such a long time? I was so pissed because here I am in the 90s. Hip hop was everything. Basketball was better than. All this African spirituality around me, and I just didn't know the names and the symbols. So first, the truth will set you free, but first to piss you off, it'll piss you off for different reasons. And once you kind of get past that, like, Sai, you missed it. You're just gonna have to keep it moving, girl. And that's okay. So one of the reasons why I use very basic generic terms is because
English terms are not basic. That's why I was trying to catch you.
Okay, so the reason that I use like common terms is so people can like just get in the door. And
I understand the history. And I understand. Yeah. I understand, but Kemet and Egypt are fundamentally different, and
that's true. But first, they got to know. They have to know that Kemet is where Egypt is. Or
no. Let me explain.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
No, let me explain. No. The name Kemet is the name of the country to the people who live there and know the name of the country, who were there first. There's people who still call it Kemet. So it means the black land. So let me bring it to 2024 or 2021. Kevin Hart.
21.
Kevin Hart. There was a Black Sands comic book with Black Sands Entertainment, that guy. Kevin Hart gave the guy $1 million. I thought that was dope. That was cool. Give him $1 million to help him animate his comic series, comic strip, which is basically about African children with superpowers, you know, kind of like Marvel anime kind of, that kind of thing, but it's all us. You see what I mean?
Right.
Which is cool. And because Kevin Hart gave this guy $1 million, some Arabs and some Christians, some Europeans in Egypt, white people in Egypt, called Kevin Hart a terrorist, an Afrocentric terrorist. And the reason they called him that, they called him an Afrocentric terrorist because black people still live in the country. So black people who still live in the country are called Nubians. So black people who live in the southern part of Egypt call themselves Nubians.
Yep.
The pyramids, all of that, their ancestors built that stuff.
Yep.
The Arabs who are over there taking people on tours, doing commercial tours, it's a commodity to them, but to them, it's something beyond Islam. They think it's dark magic. They think it's black magic. They think it's evil. It's you know, animism. Or they use all of those kinds of words. You see what I mean? So what the Afrocentric idea does is it shines the light. You see, it tells you from which perspective.
Yep.
And where are you shining the light?
Yep.
So Kevin Hart, he don't know about a lot of what we're talking about. And you know, that's okay. He contributed to something because he saw it as positive, and it was positive. But you know what? They saw the impact of what he was doing more than he did.
Yep.
You see what I mean?
Because they knew.
So that's why I said the word Kemet is important, because it means the land of black people. And Arabs, even in Egypt, they don't call the country Egypt. They call the country Mazir. They call it Mazir because in Arabic, Mazir means the borderlands. So they understand that Egypt is on the fringe of their homeland in Arabia. So they understand it. And the same thing in the Hebraic language, where you talk about Mizraim. You might see that in the Bible. So it's the borderland. They understand Egypt, Africa, to be beyond their land. They understand that they're conquering foreign lands. So the name Egypt, it's important for us to identify the land from the perspective of our people who live in the country. You know, I mean, it's like calling it like Pretoria or South Africa, rather than Azania or other languages in Zulu or Bantu, who people, you know, call their country in their own. The names of countries are important, because even if you look at Sudan, right? If you look at Sudan, you know, when in antiquity, our ancestors referred to that land as Kush, right? Kush, or Taseti, or Tamiri, or Taneter, or Tanihisi, you know, the upriver. So these are the words that we use to explain our own country. Sudan means land of the blacks, but it means them over there, like slaves. You see what I mean? So the names of countries are very important. It tells you which perspective you're looking at the country from. It's important to know. I mean, you work with what you have, but when you have more, you should use more. I think.
I agree 100%. I looked up DJ Kemet, and I remember this dude from back in the day when I was in Atlanta. Anyway, I just thought I'd check to see if he's still on the ones and twos. Apparently he is. I want to give a shout out to Hmt Ntr Leslie, right here in the chat. It says Leslie Jackson, but she is Hmt Ntr Waseret, and she and I and 7 others went through our priesthood training together. So I just want to say Ankh and Ma'at to you, and thank you for joining us. I just want to make it clear, guys. I don't think we should just use Egypt all the time. I just as an entry point, like the kiddie ride, until you can go into something deeper
I think you should start with Kemet, and then you can say Egypt is occupied Kemet.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
No, seriously. And then you take that person on the ride that they probably want, of understanding things.
Yeah.
So I looked at all of the questions. I hope I got everyone's questions. I looked through this. I meant to highlight that one. Looking through all of the comments. So I also would like to let you know before we close that the Shrine of Sekhmet is going to be having classes. And our first class is with none other Dr. Ray Higgins. And the title of the class is Analysis of the Biblical Text. And it's an in-depth study of biblical concepts. So, for those of you who are not familiar with Dr. Ray Higgins, you should get familiar with him. This is not going to be Bible study like you would find at Your Holiness Church on Wednesdays, or when you first join a church and you have, you take that course for a year and you read the Bible or whatever. This is to look at it. This course is in alignment with what part of what we talked about tonight, where you teach things and look at things from your perspective. Okay. So Dr. Ray Higgins is with the African Village. Go to YouTube and watch one of his videos, maybe 10 minutes of one of his videos, and you will know what you are in for. It will be a treat. He is an esteemed elder. He went through seminary school long time ago. He has a PhD, and now, or in this part of his opening of the way, which he most certainly does, he is able to reach people who are in the church, who read the Bible, and have them to understand the connection and the origin of some of those myths and stories. I know me personally, I have looked for something like this. I think it's important for us to be able to look at the Bible from an analytic perspective. It almost touches on when we were talking about before, when we were saying, can you look at something objectively? A lot of people have a hard time looking at the Bible objectively. This is going to be an analysis of the biblical text, and I'm going to post.
Well, I don't think we should look at it objectively.
What, this?
We should
you
not.
Think we should look at? You think we should look at the Bible religiously?
No, we should look at the Bible from the perspective of our ancestors.
Absolutely.
And I think we should, again, with chronology, I think we should begin in Africa, and then we should deal with the arrival of the Bible.
And I think you should take this class. I think that you would like it, and someone with your knowledge, it would be a good class for you to take.
I mean, I'm open to sitting in and listening.
Are you familiar with Dr. Ray Higgins?
Yeah, I know who he is.
Do you know what he?
I watched his lectures.
You've seen, okay, so then you have an idea where this is going.
Yeah, I respect him as a scholar. I just I have my views about religion. So that's why, like I said, we talked about syncretism. So
yeah, that's not what this is. This isn't a course on reading the Bible and getting rooted in Christianity. That's not what it is.
Okay, yeah. It doesn't have to be that.
I want to make it clear to the people who are not familiar with Dr. Ray Higgins. This is not going to be about Christianity and building up your faith and belief in Jesus. That's not what this is. This is more of a understanding the construction of the Bible and understanding who put it together and why. You're analyzing it. That's what this is. That's what this is. And it's a 13-week course. It starts March 3rd. It's going to be on Sundays from 7 to 9. The cost for the course is only $300 total, $50 non-refundable deposit. Okay. I will have for Dr. Ray got the juice. I'm about to hang. I'm about to do that one. Oh, I got some comments on Dr. Ray. Ray Hagen's in the African Village and Cultural Center, St. Louis headquarters. Absolutely. And Dr. Ray Hagen's is awesome. I tried to send a lot of people his videos. Yes, yes, yes. So guys, wherever you saw this announcement for this Tuesday talk tonight, I'm going to put the flyer for the course there. Okay. This is going to be super awesome. And I'm excited for it. I just kind of wanted to drop that news on you guys while we were here. I want to thank Brother Ìmò Òdó for coming back and breaking down what it means to open the way. I had someone in here say basically, and one of the ways that we're kind of saying it colloquially is breaking generational curses and being the one who changes the trajectory in your family. That is a modern way to say an opener. You are the opener of the way in your family. You've opened the way, or someone has opened the way within you to enable you to be an opener for your family and for other people.
And when you remember, you restore.
Mm-hmm.
You restore Ma'at. So
I love that. When you remember, you restore.
You restore the path when you open the way.
You restore the path when you open the way. Okay. So this was a great Tuesday talk, as they often are. So do you know when you'll be done with he's currently writing the dissertation part. Do you know when you'll be done with that, or a timeline on that?
My goal is to be done by the end of the semester. So that's my goal. The
So
end
June,
of the semester
July
is May, June. So I hope, yeah. I gotta stop. I gotta be more enthusiastic about it. I'm in my head. As we talk, I realize that I get I get a bit scattered, so I get excited. So I start fast. I haven't talked like this in a while, so I hope everybody enjoyed it. I hope everybody got something of value from our conversation.
I hope so too. I'm pretty sure some people did with the comments and stuff like that. And you have such a lot to offer and what you know. And I don't know anyone who's written their PhD who was not a little afraid.
You said what?
Not a little afraid.
Oh, well.
So, and just like I'm writing my PhD, oh my goodness. So, Jared, when you say where can I watch, if you want to watch some of Dr. Ray's videos, you can watch on Facebook or YouTube, just like Arek Aru said. The course is going to be, since it's a paid for class, it's not going to be open to the public. It's going to be on a private platform just for those people who've paid for it. If you have any questions about this course, you can email me and I will get back to you. Sekhmet. It's Sekhmet and Ma'at. I love Dr. Ray got the juice. I'm gonna leave that up there because he does.
He has good lectures.
He does. He's brilliant. So my email is there. I'm actually gonna have to do this so you can see my email. It's Sekhmet, the letter N as in Nancy, and then Ma'at. So Sekhmet in Ma'at, SEKHMETNMAAT @gmail. Okay.
Like a justice fighter.
What'd you say? A justice fighter?
Because doesn't her name mean violence?
Violence?
I thought Sekhmet was.
She's a warrior.
She who was violent, the lioness.
No, she's a lion.
Are you sure?
I've never heard violent.
I'm pretty sure Sekhmet means violence. I mean, we could talk about this offline.
You don't have to this is the first time I've heard of it. I never heard
because she's a divinity of warfare.
But that's a fact. But she's also one of the divinities of healing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, depending on the day you catch her.
but violent means indiscriminate, like harm. You walking down the street minding your business, boom, somebody's violent with you.
Nah, I know what you mean. No.
Warfare is when
her name is in the Hmt Ntr, so violence is a translation. We could translate it a different way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But what I'm saying is she's a badass.
Really? I had no idea when I chose that name.
Well, there you go. That's what I was saying. I mean, Sekhmet Ma'at sounds like justice fighter to me.
Oh, justice fighter, I'll take that, but not violent. Violent is
I'm not calling you crazy.
You minding your business. Somebody told you that's violent. You acting a fool and somebody set you straight, put your behind in my eye, then you know what I'm saying? Boom, you got what you asked for. So that's my email. It's sekhmetnmaat@gmail.com. And I'm about to put, where was this? I want to put, there we go. Dr. Ray got the juice. I love that. I'm going to leave that there. So I want to thank you all for being on. We're 2 hours over, 2 hours and 5 minutes. As a matter of fact, the longest Tuesday talk I've ever done was with Dr. Ray. And it was 2 years ago, I think, 2-3 years ago. And it was the Tuesday before Christmas, and it was about how to deal with your Christian families during Christmas. And I mean, we went 3+ solid, non-stop hours. The chat was lit. There were mad people watching. And I just had to stop it. I was like, you guys, we're going to have to wind this up because it's been 3+ hours. I can't even replay the whole video because it stops at a certain point. I forgot at this point, but it ain't 3 hours and some change. That's for sure. So that's my actually the longest Tuesday talk I've ever done was with Dr. Ray. And we would still be talking. I had to shut it down, send people home.
It sounds good. It sounds like it was a community event.
It was. It was dope. I loved it. It was so dope. So yes, I want to thank you guys for really supporting Tuesday Talk and what I'm doing here. And for those of you who don't know, or maybe you've kind of figured out, I've started my own 501c3 nonprofit filed in the state of New York. And one of the components to my shrine is bringing new classes and courses. And what I have seen and come to understand are the classes I want to bring are for fundamental understandings of significant concepts like the Bible. We have to understand what's in it because so many of our people are still ruled by it. And so in order for us to live with, love, communicate, educate our friends and relatives, that we need to know what they're thinking and meet them where they are. I'm not saying we should all go on a conversion spree because people are ultimately going to do what they want to do. But at the same time, it's important to know what's guiding people on a regular basis. That's one of the courses that I have, and I'm working on other ones, and you will be seeing them shortly. I also have other components of the Shrine of Sekhmet, and I kind of just did a soft launch. I just started I'm rocking and rolling with it, but there definitely will be something where, boom, I'll make my grand entrance on the stage. So, awesome, Darlene McCrae, Dua Netter to you both. Excellent Tuesday talk as usual. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for coming. Please make suggestions. You can email me with all feedback. I definitely welcome all feedback. I mer all of you, Baraz and Sistras, all peace. I love it. Okay. Shem Ntr and Shem Ma'at. Family, I will see you next Tuesday. Shem Ma'at.
Peace.